Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. My name is AJ. I'm your host for today. Today we have an interesting topic, and the topic name is why India and China cannot be friends. So I've got 10 reasons why India and China cannot be friends. Before I start, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, whatever you can to help support the channel and build up the algorithm. And if you really like the channel and if you really like what I do, then consider supporting me by donating on Buy Me a Coffee or joining my Patreon. So without further ado, guys, let's get on with the show. So guys, I'm going to be talking about 10 good reasons why India and China cannot be friends, and they're not in any particular order or order of importance. They're all important in a matter of speaking. So I'm going to be starting with number one main reason why India and China cannot be friends. India is part of the Quad. So the Quad was built basically to contain China, and you can see from this map here, you got India on the left, you got Japan on the right, and you got Australia on the south. And these are covered by obviously American military bases. So American military base in Japan and South Korea, and there's one in Guam. And on the south you got an American military base in Australia, and you also got an American military base in Diego Garcia. And you also got an American military base around here as well, but it's a very small one, and in Thailand as well, but they're very, very small. They're not very significant. In Singapore, it's what you call a port of call, and in Thailand, I believe there's some US military in the US Embassy, and there's a couple of medical centers housing some American units, but it's very, very small. It's hardly anything to consider a threat, to be honest. The military bases in Pakistan and Afghanistan have gone. So the ones in Afghanistan, as you know, US has pulled out, and so all the troops will be leaving by September. There was a US base in Pakistan, but that's also been rejected now by Imran Khan, the president. So America has lost these two bases around Central Asia. So the main bases US has is Guam, and the ones in Japan, South Korea, where they house about 40,000 in South Korea, about 50,000 in Japan, and about 100,000 in Guam. Diego Garcia is about quite a few as well. I can't remember the exact figures. There's quite a lot in Australia as well. So around the right hand side and the south, there is a huge contingent of US military. So the weak point you can see is the Indian side. India has got all the pressure here because they also control something called the Malacca Strait. So the Malacca Strait is a few islands off the Indian coast which India owns, and is currently militarizing them. So as part of the Quad, you can see this circle here is to contain China. So in the event of any war with Taiwan, for example, or there's a war between China and Japan, or China and the US, what the US is going to do is get India to militarize these islands and to blockade any shipment going through the Strait of Malacca. Australia and US troops from Diego Garcia will cover the southern ring, so no ships pass through here. And then you got Guam, Japan, and troops from South Korea covering the eastern side of the Pacific Ocean. So that's how the US military is planning to contain China. Unfortunately, this plan is pretty much outdated because, as you know, China knew about this plan because this plan was made public during the Obama times. And since then, China has very much spent trillions building the BRI program. So these BRI are going to be going via Central Asia into Middle East and into Europe. So there are railway lines connecting Europe, Middle East, coming to China. In terms of energy, China can rely on Russia for any in the event of war. Russia provides them with 2 gas pipes, but it also provides them with a lot of oil. So there could be a lot of oil coming in and out of the borders. China is also getting oil from some of the Central Asian countries as well, and as well as the BRI. So and US leaving Afghanistan base also, Afghanistan could be a good source of the BRI as well. There could be railway lines linking Afghanistan to Iran and to Europe, for example. So this plan is a kind of outdated, and there's not much they can do, the US, if they did want to contain China, for example. And India is the weak point. As you can see, India has all the pressure on this side of the border. So they have the border issues, but India is also surrounded by Pakistan. They're also surrounded by Afghanistan. If the Taliban take over, Taliban are more friendly towards Pakistan than India, and Iran is obviously on the side of China. So India is pretty much surrounded. So India is the weak point, unfortunately. But if India ever allows military bases, US military bases, to be stationed in India, which I don't think they will, I don't think they're that stupid, then that could change things. But I don't think that's going to happen, really. So being part of the Quad really is just angering China, because even though the plan is to contain China, not in a million years they can contain China, but India being part of the Quad is just pissing China off, really. So unless they get off the Quad and start being more neutral, India and China will never be able to be friends. As long as they're part of the Quad, friendship will never happen. So let's move on to number 2, shall we? So number 2 reason, guys, in no particular order, India seems to be pivoting towards the West when it comes to investments, when it comes to policies. They are simply doing what the West wants of India. For example, recently India cancelled China's 5G trials, and you can see there's a lot of anti-China rhetoric coming from a lot of papers. They're saying it's a huge win, but in reality, guys, they don't see the big picture. And you can see this article here, what a ban on Chinese gear means for India's 5G plans. Indian telecom companies will have to innovate, while Western suppliers of equipment will mean higher costs. So exactly, guys, you are just falling behind the West when it comes to UK. For example, UK is still years from getting 5G, mainly because they're still dismantling the existing 5G that Huawei had, and they're now dismantling what Huawei built, and they're going to replace it with Ericsson and Nokia, which are much more expensive, and they're still probably 5 years away from having 5G, which means you're losing out on development. You know, China is already on 5G, and you see how fast their development is moving. 5G brings with it new technologies, new ways of lives, and it's $1 trillion industry having 5G, and everything becomes easier. So India is again following the West and also falling behind when it comes to technologies. India is also has banned a lot of Chinese apps, and India is pretty much following America. If America sanctions China, India seems to follow suit. For example, the sanctions against Iran, the American told India to stop buying oil from Iran, and India pretty much listened. So they pretty much listen to whatever the West kind of tells them or wants them to do, really. So it's a kind of sad. They don't seem to have their own mind when it comes to their sovereignty or their own economy. They seem to listen to whatever America wants and whatever the West wants of them. It's a shame because, you know, the West, especially Britain, had occupied India for over 300 years, looted their country, stole all their treasures, sent India back into the Stone Age when they left, pretty much. Used all their troops for wars. They used so many Indian lives for the Second World War. They used so many Indian lives for wars with China, with the Opium War, for example. They used so many Indian lives all over the world. So they pretty much used Indian people, pretty much used and abused them, and then dumped them, looted all their treasures. And I just still can't believe why India is still, following the West and siding with them. But anyway, that's their decision. So the third reason India and China can never be friends is because of the BRI and the RCEP. So this is the BRI. It's basically linking China to the rest of the world. It's linking Russia, it's linking Central Asia, it's linking Middle East, it's also linking Europe, Southeast Asia. There's also a BRI project happening in South America as well. So it's happening all over the world. I think it's over 140 countries that have signed up to it. And India is not one of them. So if you look at this map here, this is also the RCEP, which is a regional trade, free trade agreement. And you can see originally India was supposed to be part of this, as well as America, but America pulled out. India also didn't sign up to it. So China has basically got supply links with all of these Southeast Asian countries, including Australia and Japan, South Korea as well. So for the next 5-10 years, all of these supply chains between all of these countries will improve, and that's just gonna not help India, to be honest. India's gonna be missing out big time. And also you can see China's links to Bhutan and Nepal. So you can see their railway lines, which is going to be extended from Lhasa to Shigatse, and you can see these railway lines are going to be heading into Nepal, and there's going to be one going into Bhutan. So they are extending the BRI to India's neighbouring countries. There's also going to be one going to Myanmar and also Bangladesh, and there's also links going to Laos and all these Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. So you can see China is building links and supply chains to all of these surrounding countries, and India is not part of it. And the reason India is not part of it, because obviously they don't want anything to do with China, so anything to do with China they're pretty much against. And also they're against it because they don't want to upset their main partner, America. And also, there's political reasons as well. The fourth reason India and China cannot be friends, India needs to stop blaming China for the COVID virus. As you can see here, 67% of Indians blame China, but that's down to the government. That's down to the media. The media is so bad in India. You got WIO News, Gravitas News on a daily basis. They're hounding China, blaming them for the COVID-19. They're hounding them, asking for, calling lab leaks in Wuhan. They're going internationally, coming up with these stories. On a daily basis, they're telling their population it's all China's fault, when it's all India's fault. After the first wave, India pretty much forgot about COVID. Their lives went back to normal. They were doing Kumbh Melas where there was millions of people gathering. They were doing election rallies, and everyone was going back to work, working as normal after the first wave, and they probably thought they were invincible. And then when the second wave hit, they didn't know what hit them, because they're completely unprepared for it. And you've got nobody else to blame but yourselves. You need to, obviously the politicians had to blame China to take away some of their failures, and they needed somebody to blame. Obviously they didn't want Indians to blame the government for their own failures, so they decided to blame China for it. So until all that stops, guys, India and China will never be friends. So the fifth reason why India and China cannot be friends is because of the border issues. As you know, China and India had never agreed to the border. The border was basically agreed by Britain at the time leaving India, and they agreed it with Tibet. And China did not agree to this. So there are disputed regions between the two countries. So, if you look at the history, when British occupied India, Britain was using a lot of Indian troops to attack China. We're talking about the Opium Wars and stuff. They used a lot of Indian frontline troops, and a lot of Indians died because of that. But the British survived because they were at the back and they were just sending the Indians at the front. They also looted the country for about 300 years, completely used India left, right and centre. So there was obviously not much trust between China and India at the time. But as you can see, in 1947, India and Pakistan gained their independence from Britain, and 1949, the People's Republic of China was founded. So that was the beginning of brand new relationships between India and China. I mean, China realizes it's not Indians' fault that Indian soldiers were forced to kind of attack China. So obviously it was down to the British. So they were pretty much friends for a while. 1954, as you can see, the two countries signed an agreement of the 5 principles for peaceful coexistence. So that was at the height of the kind of relations between the two countries. China was even prepared to accept the Manmohan line as the border. India pretty much rejected this proposal. So if they had accepted this proposal back then, things would have been much better between the two countries. And because they didn't accept it then, it just made things a lot difficult now. Obviously there was a war between them in 1962 where India lost some territory. India lost that war and they lost some territory, but there's still disputed areas. They lost this territory next to Chin. And there's obviously this area, Arunachal Pradesh, which China claims. So this part is where India claims the Akshai Chin. So there are still border issues, and as you know, with the Ladakh incident last year, further going to cause more issues between the two countries. China, in the meantime, is building up a lot of infrastructure along this border areas, especially around Tibet area. And obviously India is not very happy about that. And unless the border issues are resolved, things are not going to get any better. And it's getting worse for India, to be honest, because the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to be in terms of resolving these border issues, because China and India had the same GDP in the 1990s. But look at China's GDP now compared to India. They're just racing ahead. And they're saying that in 10 years, based on the current growth rates of GDP, if China remains on the 6 to 8% and India remains on 6 to 8%, China's GDP would go up to 30 trillion, as well as if their GDP per capita also increases as well, they could easily reach 40 trillion economy by 2030, 2035, and they would far become much more powerful than India. And as time goes on, China is less likely to provide any concessions to India because of this. So as it goes on, guys, it's really looking most likely that India will have to provide concessions rather than the other way around. China does not view India as equal anymore, like it did in the 1954 when China offered the line to be exactly how it is if India kind of given the Akshai Chin area to China. So back then, if India did say yes to that, it would have been much better off for both countries. But now it's becoming increasingly unlikely for India to gain any more ground, and it's more likely to lose ground because as it happens, China is becoming much more powerful in terms of military, economy, soft power and hard power, and it's going to be harder for India to get any concessions out of them. So the next reason why China and India cannot be friends is because of the power gap that's growing between the two countries. As you know, China's GDP is almost 5 times as big as India's, and with the current growth rates, China would become 30 or 40 trillion GDP, while India is still going to be languishing in 5 or 6 trillion. So there could be a gap of 30 trillion within the next 10 years between the two countries, and that is a lot. So it's not just GDP, there's something called soft power and also hard power as well. Hard power is quite pretty much easy, it's military strength and things like that, but soft power you basically look at it in terms of foreign policy, your cultural and your political influence, and even the soft power China is winning. Whether it comes to tourism, whether it comes to attracting foreign investors, whether it comes to having World Heritage sites, whether it comes to attracting students, tourists, basically is attracting global brands as well. It's attracting global brands and people into your country, and China is miles ahead of India at the moment. And the reason is because China is very much more modern than India. It provides more. It's got a great supply chain. The society is pretty much safe in China, and it's out of corruption as well. And you can pretty much live a good life in China. While India, there's still a lot of people in poverty. The infrastructure is not quite there, and they have a lot harder time attracting foreign investments and also foreign people and tourists as well. And the numbers don't lie. As you can see from the conclusion from this report, soft power theory suggests the ability to persuade rests on the power of attraction. We in India may think we're more attractive than China, but numbers show otherwise. Exactly. So soft power in China is much higher. Hard power military, they're much higher. In terms of GDP, much higher. So why is this important? The reason this is important, guys, is because Indians mainly look at China as an equal, but unfortunately China does not look at India as an equal. China sees itself as a lot more powerful, 5-6 times more powerful than India. However, people in India seem to think that China and India are an equal. So there are a lot of people in India who are hating on China because of that. There's a lot of jealousy as well of how fast China has grown compared to India. And obviously, when you had the same GDP as China at one point, almost 30 years ago, now China is racing ahead. There can be a lot of people who are jealous, who are kind of hateful of China's rise, who want China to, pretty much collapse, things like that. And so China does not see India as an equal anymore. They probably did 30, 40 years ago, but they don't see it anymore. Indians still think China is an equal. And the problem is, unless you change the perception, unless you look at the numbers, unless your attitude changes, you cannot be friends. I mean, you just have to look at the numbers. China is a lot more powerful than India. And just think about it, guys. So say, if India and Nepal had border issues and Nepal suddenly wants to be, Nepal is saying that they're equal to India and they want most of the border issues, they want concessions. Would India give Nepal any concessions? No, because India obviously much more powerful than Nepal. They're not going to give Nepal any concessions because they see Nepal as a weaker country. In fact, Nepal needs to give India more concessions. So that's how it works. If you're a more powerful country, you get more concessions. If you're a weaker country, you have to give concessions. That's how it is. The more power, for example, like America throws away its power to all smaller countries, gives them the threat of sanctions and all sorts. So uses, its political will, military will to get what it wants from other countries, and that's where power comes from. Whether it's soft power, whether it's hard power, and you're more likely to get concessions if you got that power. So the problem is here, guys, Indians still see China as an equal, and unless that attitude changes, they can never be friends. So the seventh reason why India and China cannot be friends is they have totally different systems. China's system, obviously, you got the Communist Party there, but their system is more of a socialist and a capitalist with Chinese characteristics. So obviously it's a 5,000-year-old civilization, so they're pretty much using the best of different methods, and they've pretty much found a method that works for them. So when they look at India, they see that as a completely Western, messy democracy. It's something that the British left behind in India and is currently not working, guys. Because you just have to look at the amount of people that are still in poverty in India, and that's just not going to change. And there's other issues as well. There's the class system, and because of the class system, you'll always have the rich who will not let the poor become equal to them or get any better than them. There's always going to be lots of poor people in India. There's a lot of issues in India. India preaches human rights, and it talks about China's human rights, but India's got human rights issues of its own. It doesn't look at places like Kashmir, where there was a huge crackdown. There was huge human rights issues there. There was the farmers' protest, where there was huge human rights issues there as well. So India has got huge human rights issues, and while it still talks about China's human rights, and I just don't think it's right. India has got a lot of issues with its society. And China looks at that, and China sees that as a very messy democracy. It's something that the British left behind, and it obviously doesn't work in India. But obviously, it's Indians' own sovereignty; they can do whatever they want. But you have to look at the history. India and China being neck and neck 30 years ago, and look at how fast China has grown compared to India. And that's just down to the two systems. So India still has a long way to go before it finds a system that works for them. China has already found its system. So because of the two different systems, the people of the two countries, they don't look favorably at each other. Indians preach democracy and stuff like that to China, calling them communists and things like that. So because of these two systems, a lot of jealousy is involved that communism is doing better than democracy, and because of all of that hate that's going on between the two systems, unless that changes, they can never be friends. Another reason India and China cannot be friends, guys, is because Indians have such bad media. And one of the worst media outlets I've ever seen in my life is Gravitas, or WION. It is so bad. I would say it's worse than BBC, CNN, Fox News. It actually is the worst channel I've ever seen in my whole life. It is so anti-China, it's laughable. If you just put Gravitas in China, all you see is anti-Chinese hate, coming up with stupid stories such as China's dumping human waste, China's seeds of terror, basically wolf warrior stuff, China's cover-up, China's Wuhan lab doctor stuff. They're coming up with all sorts of stories. Every day it's just anti-Chinese rhetoric. I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of hearing it. And her face, is just literally riling up the Indian population and people. I've never seen anything so hideous and terrible media in my whole life. And I've seen a lot of bad media over the years, and I would probably put Gravitas as number one. It's probably the worst media I've ever had, unless India puts a clamp down on what Gravitas is reporting. Things will never be the same between the two countries. And I see a lot of Chinese media, and it's never as bad as this, guys. You got CGTN and all these other newspapers and channels in China. They'd never vilify India the way that India vilifies China. Seriously, you guys seriously need to look at yourselves. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it puts you in a really bad light. Puts you it shows you're very uneducated, uncivilized. And is this how you want people to view you from the outside world? I'm English and I'm British, and I look at Gravitas and WIN, and I'm completely disgusted. I've never seen anything so biased in my whole life. It makes BBC look like the best news channel on earth, and it's not like that. Seriously, it needs to have a clamp down on this, guys. I just feel this channel and its rhetoric is coming straight from the top. I'm talking about Modi. It's also coming from America as well. If India wanted to stop this channel, or they wanted to calm it down, they could have. For example, when the Indian variant was called the Indian variant not long ago, they sent out letters to all the media companies to call it the Delta variant. They did a campaign all over the world to change the Indian variant to the Delta variant because they didn't want to have the word Indian associated with it. So they did that. So if they can do that, they can control their media and the media around the world. They can do it here as well, but they don't want to. They want to keep this anti-Chinese rhetoric going on. They want to rile the Indian people to hating it Chinese. It's good for them. It's good for them to get votes, and it covers their failures. Okay, the ninth most important thing China and India cannot be friends is because of the allies. So basically, let's start with Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. So in the past, India had a lot of control over Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. But since China started this BRI program, where it's got links being developed between Nepal, there's going to be links developing between Bhutan, there's going to be links developing between Bangladesh. These countries are more heading towards China now. And especially in Nepal, they've recently elected a communist party to run the country. So a lot of countries that were very much friendly to India in the past are now pivoting towards China. Then you got Pakistan, who has never been friends with India, and as you know, there's always been issues between Pakistan and India. And Pakistan and China are pretty much like iron brothers, they call it. They are pretty much inseparable. So as long as China and Pakistan are friends, India would never be friends with China, because being friends with China would mean being friends with Pakistan. The other issue is Afghanistan. As you know, the US troops have left Afghanistan. Afghanistan had a lot of influence and also a lot of money coming in from India, but that's all going to disappear very soon because American troops are pulled out. So a lot of investment that India did, or a lot of money they poured into Afghanistan, is going to disappear. It's going to be covered by the Taliban, and the Taliban are friendly to Pakistan. So again, that's another territory that India will lose, another country of influence they will lose. Another country they're going to lose is Iran. Iran was very friendly with India up to a point before the sanctions. So once the sanctions came into Iran, India stopped working with Iran. India stopped buying oil from Iran. They pretty much turned their backs on Iran, to be honest, mainly because America put sanctions on it, and America told India to stop buying oil from Iran, and India obviously said yes. So I don't really understand it, because India is a sovereign country and they got energy needs. Who is US to tell India where to buy his oil from? So they've turned their backs on Iran, and they've got nobody to blame but themselves. I'm talking about the Indians. And now they've left themselves in a pretty bad state, isolated. All of these countries who are previously friendly to India are now heading towards China. India's pivot to the West in terms of America is also alienating a lot of friendly countries to India, like Russia. Because of India's growing friendship with America, or even Russia is now skeptical of being friends with India. India is isolating themselves. They're not part of the BRI, they're not part of the RCEP, and they're pretty much isolating themselves. Their plan of having an alternative to the BRI, which was going from Chabahar port from Iran, going into Afghanistan and then into Central Europe, that's up in smoke now because of the US troops pull out from Afghanistan. So that's pretty much up in smoke. And it's also up in smoke with Iran, because Iran has recently signed a $400 billion deal with China. So China will have a lot of influence in Iran over the next 20, 30, 25 years, I would say, probably more. So India is pretty much losing a lot of influence in the surrounding areas. So that's another reason India and China cannot be friends, because China is pretty much taking all of India's previous countries it was friendly to, and India doesn't like that. So that's another reason. The 10th and final reason why India and China cannot be friends, again, it's not in any particular order. It's because of China's hegemony with water, and because China controls most of the water around the Tibetan plateau. So you can see the Yarlung Tsangpo River, which originates from Tibet and goes into India as the Brahmaputra. And you can see also the Sutlej and Indus rivers coming from Mount Kailash. So they're also starting from China, Tibet. And so you can see a lot of rivers are coming from China and the Tibet region. So India is not very happy because India, for the last couple of years, they've been suffering a huge water shortage. Their water is running out in India. A lot of these rivers, they're running out of water. A lot of villages around India are running out of water. They're having a huge drought as well, so they're having a huge water shortage problem. And water, they're saying that in the next 10-15 years, India won't be able to sustain their population with the amount of water that they need. So there will be a huge issue in the next 10 years unless India can sort something out. So because China controls a lot of these rivers, so China is obviously planning on building the world's largest hydroelectric dam, which is going to be 3 times the size of Gorges Dam around this area. So that's happening. They've also got a lot of dams already being built along the Yarlung Tsangpo area. So China has the monopoly of water over the next 10-15 years, especially around this region. And India feels very, very nervous because of that, because they're running out of water, and they are starting to get very nervous because they have to rely on China on a lot of their water supplies. And so unless that changes, India and China will be very, very nervous of each other, distrust of each other, and it could even start a war, to be honest. I mean, if China does build a dam around here, it's going to be very close to these border regions where there's disputed border regions. China's going to have a lot of infrastructure, military bases around this area as well. And I've seen articles in India saying that if India continues to have water issues, or if there's any issues with the Brahmaputra river, if that river starts kind of going down and start losing more and more water, India could in fact start a war and start even blow up the dam even. So that could happen. Highly unlikely, because the way China is growing military and the way India is growing military, China would be a lot more powerful in 10 years time. So it's hardly unlikely, but when a country needs a lot of water and is desperate, then you never know, it might still happen. But yeah, water is the final reason why they can't be friends. So that's all, guys, for now. Let me know if you have any other reasons they can't be friends. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if you want to talk to me. I do speak to each and every one of you. I do read all the comments. I'm learning a lot as well from you guys. So keep it up, keep the algorithm up, help me promote the channel. If you can share whatever you can on your social media, Chinese social media, that'll be great. And if you really like the channel, if you really want to support me, as you know, a lot of my videos don't get monetized, so I appreciate your support. If you can provide, you can buy me a coffee or join my Patreon or give any other donations. So thanks for your time listening to my presentation, and I'll see you guys soon on the next video.